In Titus 2, older women are commanded to teach what is good so they can help younger women love their husbands and children. On today's show, you'll hear from older women who will share timeless, relevant biblical wisdom and personal, profound life experiences to help answer your questions and teach what God says is good so you can be the wife and mother you were created to be. Welcome to another episode of Older Women Likewise.
Good evening. We're so glad to have you back with us again this evening. And I am so delighted to welcome these ladies that are going to talk on this subject, understanding the autistic person with the love of God. This is such an important topic. And it's not only for a person who is on the autism spectrum, but any person who has a difference in the way that they think, the way that they feel, the way that they act. I think these principles from God's word will help each of us in understanding those. So welcome back, Beth, as you know, is my daughter. And Julie Estes, we're glad to have you with us. And of course, Christine Eckhart, that we've just been, before the program started, talking about Christine's farm episodes and escapades. So it's just, it's such a pleasure to have you ladies back with us this evening. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We want to talk first of all about that an autistic person, a person on the spectrum, just like any other person, is made in the image of God. And we want to talk about that. And Beth, I know you had sent me this material and this point first. Can you develop that some for us?
Well, the last time we were on, we talked about it some as well, that we get our value from God. All of us do. And we're made in the image of God. We're all unique. And that is a blessing, because it would be a pretty boring world if everyone was exactly the same. And we would not have a lot of the things that we have. Mankind wouldn't, if we all thought the same way and nobody knew how to think outside of the box or in different ways. I, in thinking about this, thought about 1 John 4, 10 through 12, where it talks about herein is love, not that we love God, but that he loved us and sent his son to be the propitiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we ought also to love one another. No man has seen God at any time. If we love one another, God dwells in us, and his love is perfected in us. And that means people who are different from us, too. And so, I think that we need to learn to value each other the way that God values each of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a good point. Good point. I was thinking, too, that, we have a responsibility to love one another. And I thought, too, about golden rule treatment. We often talk about how we should treat the other person, do unto others as you would have them do to you. Julie, can you talk some about maybe golden rule treatment that you've seen toward your children?
Yeah, well, one of the first things that comes to my mind just with this in general is people are people, like Beth said.
Mm-hmm.
If you were trying to relate with someone from another country, another culture, you would treat them with respect. Mm-hmm. You would treat them with love. As a Christian, you would treat them as any other person. And that's how we should also treat our autistic friends and children and the people around us that have any sort of difference in them. And it's just a staple sort of in our society to do that, not even looking at it biblically. So, right. I think that people just sometimes forget to apply that in this situation. If we talk about our responsibility to people in the world, one of the scriptures that I had looked at, Galatians 6, 9 through 10, So in the first part of that, he talks about reaping what you sow, right? You sow the flesh, you reap the flesh, sow the spirit, you reap the spirit. And then he says, let us not grow weary in doing while doing good, for in due season we'll reap if we do not lose heart. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially those of the household of faith. So there's sort of two things in there. Don't grow weary in doing good. Sometimes that's easy to do when we're dealing with people that don't think the same way we do. And that could be because of autism or something like that, or it could just be because of cultural differences or anything. But we do sometimes grow weary in that, and God's told us not to. And he also told us to do good to all, and especially those of the households of faith. So if we have people in our congregation that need a little extra support, we're told to do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Christine, any thoughts on that come to you? Oh, I think you're still muted, maybe, Christine.
I'm so sorry. I remember the first time I had the golden rule explained to me as a child. My very literal autistic brain did not understand it because I was thinking, well, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, very frequently the things I want people to do unto me were very different, and they seem to not relate at all. And I was thinking, people are not going to like that. We don't need the same things. And so I had my parents broke it down, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, involves realizing that you don't always know what they need.
Mm-hmm.
You know what you need, but that doesn't mean that they need the same thing. And so treating people as they deserve to be treated, in that they are person made in the image of God, but that does not necessarily mean their needs always equate. Because I would think, well, if I were to do unto others, if I saw someone who looked stressed in a social situation, I might think, oh, well, maybe they want me to just, I could think maybe they want me to leave them alone. Maybe they're overwhelmed. There's too much sound. That might not be at all what they want. They might want me to reach out and talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
People want different things at different times. And I had to work as a kid to learn that sometimes you don't know what people need. And so you can't just do what you think you would want in that situation, because they are not you, and they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be identical to you.
Yeah.
And so that sometimes do unto others takes a little bit more thought than we sometimes think. I hope that that's on topic and I didn't just go on a tangent.
Nope, you did good. That's exactly right. In fact, that was exactly what I was thinking was, my husband and I are quite different when the do unto others doesn't work for us. When I'm sick, I want somebody at my side, and I want them, what can I do for you? What would you like now? Would you like some, I want somebody right there petting me. And he wants to be in a dark room left alone. So my do unto him is leave him alone, and his do unto me is pet me, so but I think it takes some effort to find out. And that's one thing I think with working with and knowing autistic person is you take the time to get to know them, and to find out what works for them, what is helpful. And we want to talk about that a little bit later in the program too. But I'd like to talk first about, be careful about making judgments before you know the facts. We all make judgments. Now, anybody tells you, oh, I never judge anybody's not being totally right, because that's how we live. That's how we survive. We make constant judgments. Do I trust them? Are they dangerous? Friend or foe kind of thing. But we have to be really careful in the judgments that we make. And how is it possible? How is it even usual to misjudge a person on the autism spectrum? Julie, do you find misjudgment occurring in that sense?
Yeah, so my kids have always looked, I have twins, for those that didn't see the previous broadcast. I do have twins that are both autistic, and both of them have always been tall for their age and looked old for their age. But that mental, intellectual is behind their age. And so that not only did we have the gap, but then we had, you even look older than you actually are. And in preschool, a whole head taller. So so yeah, my kids were judged in preschool to look like kindergartners, yet they were, acting below that. And you go places, and that's in the back of your mind. And I have been blessed to not have too many things said out loud in front of us. There have been a few occasions that I've had things said that were unpleasant, but yeah, it's easy for people to do because they just assume that your life is like their life, and that if your child is acting this way, well, when their child acted this way, here was the reason, so your reason must be the same as their reason. And if your child looks this old, then he must act this old. So yeah, we run into that. But usually, if you just stay the course of what you're doing, your kids won't realize what's going on, and you can get past it. If you need to talk to them about it later, you can. But yeah, it's something that does come up. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, these things, we make judgments, but and I think the wise and self-controlled person will make a judgment, but will hold off on that judgment until they find out maybe some more information, and look and see what is the situation here.
Right. And you can find out that information easily, maybe not for the random person in the supermarket,
Right.
but for people that you see at worship, or that are friends in common, or at a school or something, you can find those things out. If you invest time with their family, if you notice how their family and close friends interact with them, then you can just follow suit.
Right.
And it's really not that difficult to do. And like you say, hold your tongue, hold your judgment until you have gathered some information, even just by observation.
Right. Absolutely. And what are some ways that Beth or Christine, that a person, that outside person, we'll call it a third party, or the other person, can look and see and notice in terms of a person on the spectrum, that there are differences? And I think Julie made a really good point. How do the people that they know, how do they relate to them? Gives you some ideas. What are maybe some other ways that other people can look and see, what's going on?
Well, I think just generally human beings, when they are uncomfortable or feel threatened, there's behaviors just pretty much across the board. I really am thinking about one specific time. We were at a place where they would work with people on the autism spectrum, and there was a very tall large young man there who was on the spectrum, and he was playing his video game, and our youngest, who didn't know, was getting too close to him, and you could see him getting nervous. And I mean, if you see someone is uncomfortable, if they look uncomfortable, they're probably uncomfortable. And so I mean, a lot of it, like you said, like observation, pay attention to what's going on with them. It doesn't hurt to get some basic facts about autism. And also, I mean, I feel like one of the biggest things to understand is not everyone wants to be touched. Some people don't want you. They don't want to make eye contact. It's not because they don't like you. It's because it's hard for them to make eye contact and talk. You get one or the other, but you're not going to get both.
Yeah.
And some people, they just don't like to be touched. And if you see that in someone that's making them uncomfortable, it's not loving to force a hug on somebody that doesn't want a hug. It makes them uncomfortable. So you have to find maybe a different way to show them love or affection or whatever. There's different ways to communicate. And I guess mainly is we just all, when people are uncomfortable, you can pretty much tell. If you see you're making someone uncomfortable, just back up a little bit. Pay attention to it.
I was reading something about love languages and the different ways that we show love and affection to one another. And it made me think of this program, what we were going to talk about. We expect love and affection a certain way, and we expect to give it, but that's not always what's the best in the
Right.
situation. And like Christine was saying about golden rule, you just have to learn to what is needed and what is helpful. Christine, any thoughts on this?
For one thing, I hate the comment that Beth just made about eye contact, because I really think, I'm sure some people have thought that I was rude for how infrequent my eye contact is at times. And it's more that I want to listen to them. And because it really is hard sometimes to process information and make eye contact at the same time. I have likened eye contact to feeling like, for me at least, it varies from person to person, like a really good tight hug. You don't want to just give everybody a really good tight hug. That would feel really weird. You have to really be close to someone to feel comfortable with a hug like that. And for me, at least, that's a little bit more like eye contact. It's like I can feel very invasive and uncomfortable. And my understanding is for some autistic people, it can even be painful.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I really wish that maybe that was less associated with caring about what someone's saying, because that has nothing to do with how much I care about what you're saying. My other thought was, I guess, just that some autistic people, if not all, have very different facial expressions than might typically be expected. Sometimes their faces move more, sometimes they move less, sometimes they have different facial expressions, different situations than people would expect. But that does not mean that they're not processing it in a very human way. Their face just does not line up with what's inside of them in the same way a neurotypical person's face does. It's a different.
And
that makes sense.
I think that really leads us to the next thing I want us to talk about is, we've often heard it said, well, autistic people just don't have any emotions. They don't have any empathy. They can't sympathize with people. Do you think that's true? Or is there some aspect of it that's true? I think, Christine, you've really hit on it. Our faces don't show the emotions that we feel, but that doesn't mean that we don't feel those emotions. It's just, it's not the same. And when I was in teaching, as well as a principal, and had a class for autistic children, you could tell that in the aspect of the children, the way that they would seem to relate to me would not, their way they looked and what they did sometimes didn't express what they, after I'd leave the room, the teacher, they just really love you. They love you to visit. And I'd say, really? How could I tell? So I think sometimes you have to assume that. Julie, something you would like to share on this?
Yeah. So to sort of build on what Christine said, and I find with my kids that sometimes it's a delayed reaction. So maybe that reaction doesn't seem to fit what's being said or done right now, because we're still processing what happened a minute and a half ago. And so we're getting the reaction from what was the sentence or two before what you said. And that may, like you say, when you leave the room, they're so happy about it. Well, they were happy about what you did, but maybe weren't able to express it at that time.
Right.
And it has just processed and sunk in. And so that is something I see. The emotion is 100% there. And I think sometimes they may choose to suppress it for whatever reason, because they're just uncomfortable, afraid, for any number of reasons. But I think sometimes emotion is suppressed on purpose, just because of I'll say shyness. I don't think it's specifically shyness, but something akin to shyness.
Yeah. Beth?
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking about what Julie said is I can understand why you might want to suppress that. Imagine you don't understand the rules of whatever this nuance of the situation is, and you don't respond right. So then you get in trouble. well, you're going to start reining that in because you don't understand. And every situation is, social situations are like so nuanced. It's the rule's not always the rule. And so it's easier just to kind of, rein it in, hold it tight to yourself, because I can see why you wouldn't want to put yourself out there too much if you didn't understand what you were supposed to do.
Right. We love routines. We love our routines, but social interactions are anything but routine.
Right.
And routines are very helpful, but in that situation, you can't predict.
Right.
I think some of it too is, from what I can tell, a lot of neurotypical social interactions with emotions have to do with mirroring each other's emotions. And I'm sure that that's very important, but honestly, I've had to learn to do it almost manually, because logically to me, I've never understood why someone would want me to mirror their emotions instead of us just feeling our own separate emotions and just acknowledging that. And so that's, for example, like smiling, and when you say hello to someone, to me, I have to remember that I'm supposed to do that, because I don't understand why me saying hello to someone is more or less valuable if I smile or not. But I remember to do it because other people prefer it, if that makes sense. There's some of it that I think has to do with the fact that I don't understand that. I don't know how to explain it.
Well, it's like, in a lot of ways, to me, it's like being in another country and they have a funny culture. It's almost like, okay, when you say hi in another country, when you say hi to somebody, you need to put your hand on top of your head. It's like that kind of logic. It doesn't make sense, but that's what you do. And so they feel like if you do that, then everything is good. And so you do it.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily, it's not what you feel. And it's something that I, in teaching and in working with people, I would be talking to somebody and I would turn and I'm just thinking about what they're saying, but I can't look at them in the face. And I would have to learn to, okay, turn back, square up my shoulders and look at them. And it had to be, I had to think about doing that.
Yes.
Because it wasn't natural to me. I'm still thinking about what they're saying, but turning away. So it's like being in a foreign country sometimes. And I think what we need to do, people need to do that are neurotypical, is not think and make that judgment. Well, they just don't care. They don't care what I'm thinking. They don't care what I'm feeling.
Right.
Instead, think they're expressing it a different way than what I would expect them to. But to listen to the words. We have a comment from Deb Hibbard that says, yes, it's parroting the behavior, even though you don't naturally process the exchange the same way. I have found that that people on the autism spectrum are empathetic and they are sympathetic. They just express it in their own way, not in the way that we expect them to. I know when we talked about suppressing emotions, I know I suppress mine because if I go to a funeral, I'm just crying like this was my best friend because I'm feeling the emotion of the other people. And so I suppress it so that, I don't just, for nothing. That's just me. So it seems like I'm really cold about it, but I'm just trying to keep from breaking down out in a stranger's funeral. So it's just, we need to be understanding of an autistic person. And when we see this that seems a little off to us, that doesn't fit in with what we think they ought to do, explore a little bit more and find out what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And so as we communicate with someone else. So we have another comment. Karen Whitterman says, as the Bible teaches to season our words, and Paul says to be all things to all men, I believe to relate to all people is the ability to read the room. Autism awareness is so prominent nowadays that I believe if we step back and take the cues, we will be better able to relate and respond properly. And I think that's so true. You know, I find myself, especially with these lessons, that as I'm thinking about them and have been, you know, studying and mulling, and we've talked on several occasions, the four of us, that you know, when I see somebody that's kind of a little off, I think, I wonder if they're on the spectrum. And then I feel much more sympathetic, I think, to them. I feel like, well, let me not judge and then push them away immediately, you know, because perhaps they're on the spectrum. That also brings me to my next. Oh, yes. And Beth, you want to say?
I wanted to say, and I feel like, especially if you have an understanding, more of an understanding of people on the autism spectrum, you can help them be that connection to help them connect to other people in a way that's comfortable for them. If that makes sense.
Yep. And my next point here was the wilderness of social interactions. And it can be such a difficult thing for us. And Beth, you said it right. We can help people that are having a hard time in those interactions. Any thoughts on that, ladies? Beth?
I spoke to a lady this morning and about her son and asked her if I could share this, and she told me I could. Oh, so that was wonderful. She actually told me the word she said was, because people need to know. And I just thought that was beautiful.
That is good.
And so what I wanted to share about this man is that he doesn't talk very much. I don't know that he enjoys talking to just everybody. You know, he talks sometimes, but not that much. But every time we're at worship service, every time, if he's there, you will get a greeting. Now, he doesn't talk to you. He'll do like this. This is how he comes up to, but you will be greeted by him, everybody. And it's like, my understanding is that someone taught him this a long time ago. And so this is the thing that he does, and he participates in this way, in a way that's comfortable for him. And I'm telling you, when we were during the COVID phase and he wasn't able to be there, man, I missed him so much, because he was always, you would always get a greeting, you know, and I don't know, to me, it was just a beautiful thing to watch the way that he connects with people, with everybody that way, and what he brings to our worship services just by being there and greeting people.
And I've been at your services too, and have not only been greeted, but seen him greeting other people. And it almost feels like people are waiting for him to come by and greet.
Yeah,
So it's kind
they are.
You know, it's a thing. And he does, even though he doesn't do what somebody else does in communicating, he still brings that joy of the Lord to them as well.
Absolutely.
What are some things, do you think, that anybody that neurotypical people can do to help the person on the autism spectrum in a social interaction? Or maybe how can they interact with an autistic person that is not the usual social interaction?
I think one thing is yes, no questions. Quite often, a yes, no question can be answered and not be awkward at all. And, you know, you can just move a conversation along with yes, no questions. And that gives them an opportunity to participate and have that social interaction if they're not able to carry on the rest of the conversation along with you. But we also need to not be in a hurry, because I've mentioned processing times, the time it takes for them to think about what you say and then to respond back sometimes is slower, or they may need a minute to make it through a sentence. They may start the sentence, pause, or start the sentence 2 or 3 times before they finish. And we just need to have the patience to just be there and be present in that conversation while that's happening.
Right. Christine, do you have some thoughts?
I don't know if any of you are familiar with the double empathy problem study that was done. To put it briefly, they had three groups of people, social interactions they studied. One was neurotypical people speaking to each other. One was autistic people speaking to other autistic people. And one was a neurotypical person speaking to an autistic person. And they did that to see how effective the different communication was. And instead of finding that autistic people speaking to another autistic person was the least effective, what they found was that neurotypicals talking to each other and autistic people talking to each other were both equally effective. And the only time the communication broke down is when you had two people of different brain types interacting.
Mm-hmm.
And so the takeaway from that was that, I guess, if you're talking to someone and you know that they think differently from you, don't try not to let the back of your mind carry this person doesn't communicate as well as I do, because that will come across at some level, and whether or not they realize it, you will end up talking down to them, and that will harm your ability to serve them or just benefit from their friendship. Remember that just because people communicate differently, that does not mean they communicate in a way that's inferior, if that makes sense. Regardless of how much of it is verbal and how much of it is behavioral or whatever, they are not an inferior person just because they can't communicate in a way that's societally more expected, I guess.
Exactly.
I totally agree with what Christine is saying. And I think that maybe when you're talking to someone who's on the spectrum, instead of expecting them to assimilate into the way that you communicate, why don't you assimilate into the way they communicate for a little while and try that on?
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, great. I mean, just because most of the people do it, act a certain way, doesn't mean it's the only way or even the best way to act or to communicate. So just, let it be. In response to Julie's point with yes/no questions, Deb says, yes, less cognitive processing involved with yes/no questions, and it would be less stressful. And that's a really good point, is that communicate with the way that it works for that person that you're trying to serve, instead of thinking, well, they should be trying to be good to me. Be nice to them. I also wondered if you had a time to think about this question that I asked about, I had sent you all. What's the alternative to some in-person social interaction that does the same thing? And the one that I was thinking of course, it's still in person, was going fishing together. If you ever seen guys fishing, one's sitting here, one's sitting here. They're both looking out. They're doing their own thing. They're fishing, and yet they're fishing together. They've done things together, and they don't use it. I asked, what'd y'all talk about? Nothing, but they were together and they enjoyed the experience. What are maybe some other things that we could recommend if you want to get to know an autistic person, if you want to spend time with them? What's something else maybe you might do?
I thought of electronic communications of any type, email, texting, some of these apps that you can talk through, because then they've got the time in their own space to respond to you, and in their own time. If they don't feel like responding right then they can respond later. We can respond later.
Right.
Finding common interests, maybe sports. If they have a certain team they like or a certain team you like, that can be fun, whether it's face to face or not, to talk about or to show pictures from somewhere that you've been. Visual prompts are always a great thing, depending on the level of communication that someone is able to be involved in. Visual prompts are a great way to just look through. I had a family member, not my kids, but a family member that didn't have the communication abilities that my kids have. And he carried magazines around a lot. And most people interacted with him by just looking at his magazines with him and saying, "Ooh, look at that. Oh, I like that one." And it was a great way to just be with him.
Another one I thought about was, quite often we have something that we're working on and we can ask another person, could you do this particular part of this, or could you do this for me, or could you come and help me do this particular part? Something that we can, again, a shared activity that doesn't necessarily require lots of face-to-face interaction, but we've introduced ourselves, this person knows us, we know them, and has been a communication on a level. And you know, another question I thought about was, how then can the neurotypical person be love and show love toward a person on the spectrum when there's so much social interaction before church, after church services, if there's a meeting of some sort, like a potluck or something? How can the neurotypical person really show love to the autistic person and help them in that social interaction? Any ideas on that one, Christine?
Show interest in the thing that that person is enthusiastic about. Most autistic people I've met, I understand. My understanding is not all autistic people have like an enthusiasm, like that thing that's their, like, one of their consuming passions in life. My understanding is that's not all autistic people, but I will say that it's most I've met or encountered. I really think that although it's very hard to have any universal rule with interacting with someone on spectrum because we're all so different, that showing interest in something that's that person's enthusiasm is just a really great way. That's a really great love language. Ask a question about that thing that they're always talking about or always doing. Show interest and appreciation. Like for me, and I think for a lot of other autistic people, the things that we really have that just burning passion about, that is such a key part of the way we view ourselves. It's just a key part of our identity. That shows love to me if someone asks me about that thing. And I don't think I'm the only one to feel that way.
It's probably also a way that you filter the world around you, how you see the world around you. Your interest affects how you view the things around you. And so that's definitely a way to communicate. And show love.
And as you say, showing love. And that's, that's what we are really talking about here tonight, is how do you love the person on the autism spectrum that is not necessarily part of your family, but is a part of the family of God, and that you want to help them. Beth, any ideas? Nope.
You guys covered it beautifully.
Okay,
sorry, I don't have anything to add on that one.
I would add quickly just gifts, small gifts. We had a friend that we worship with that has a 3D printer at home, and every once in a while he'll print some little something and just bring it to my kids. Hey, made this for you. They love it.
Yeah, that's nice. That's very nice. This one is from Beth, because I loved how she expresses the superpower. But we want to help and love and show love toward a person on the autism spectrum without telling them, okay, what you have to do is quit being autistic, don't show that, and be in this neurotypical. You fit into this mold. But we don't want that person, we shouldn't do that. We should not want that person to lose their identity. And what we want to say, I think, to people on the autism spectrum is, don't feel like you've got to change who you are to be loved. Beth?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the superpower thing, we always told our child growing up, you're kind of like Superman, and you have some areas where you are really strong, like stronger than anybody, than most everybody else, that you're just really just strong in. And you also have some kryptonite that didn't affect the rest of us or most people, but it affects you. And so find those things that you're strong in, and be proud of those things, and that's okay. That's good. I don't know. I feel like we do need to be careful when we're talking about people on the autism spectrum. We talk about that we're not they're not lesser. They're different. And I mean, again, I think Einstein was rumored to be on the spectrum, and nobody would say he was, lesser intellectually for sure. So I have forgotten where I was going with that. Sorry.
That's good. That's all right. Good point.
My mind just went like,
That's right. There you go. Because you're getting old like your mom.
I am. No, I don't accept that. I changed
No.
that. No, I don't accept that.
Christine, do you find that's any kind of an issue? I know you've talked about last time about how your husband appreciates the way that you are in terms of relating with him is so honest and open. It makes it easy. I love that when you were telling me that.
Yes, he says that one of the huge perks about being married to someone with the way my brain works is that I don't understand subtext, and so I just directly tell him things. I say, I need this because XYZ, and I need this to not happen because of XYZ. And I'm just very clear and direct. It is because I don't know how to communicate any other way. But he says it makes his life much easier and therefore makes our marriage easier because he doesn't have to constantly guess, or he knows I don't expect him to, hopefully read my mind, which wouldn't be possible. But on the other hand, yeah, there are definitely times when I become so overwhelmed that I have to go curl up in a ball in a dark room so that I won't cry until I hyperventilate for 3 hours. And so, yeah, we have both the superpower and the kryptonite. I can speed read legal documents for him and figure out how everything fits together very quickly. But sometimes I get migraines if there's a piece of machinery that's too loud. So
yeah,
it's both. It's both.
I have to add, I think that other women need to develop that superpower that Christine has, because I'm a little jealous of your superpower, Christine.
Well, I've had to learn to take it the other way as well, because it turns out that if you grow up with that superpower, you can lose friends if you don't know how to say anything other than very bluntly. I got to moderate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both ways.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Julie, what superpowers do you find that your boys have?
Ooh, I could just make a list, honestly. But my children are so kind. They're very kind and calm. And I think that benefits them in a lot of ways. They have an opportunity to sit back and take in the room. And that's a good thing for them. But they are both just whizzes with computers, anything electronic. So one of these days, I'm going to be able just to let go of all of my passwords and how to run any computer. They're just going to do it for me. I know they will. They're well on their way. So they're both. One in particular, very, very musical. The other one is on his way with that as well. So yeah, they're great kids.
That's awesome.
We would certainly encourage anybody on the autism spectrum. You want to fit in because that works for life. We have to fit in, particularly when we're in a congregation of the Lord's people, a family of God. We need to fit in. But that doesn't mean we all need to be exactly the same. And that doesn't mean that you should and you shouldn't lose who you are or the thing that you are really good at. Don't set that aside in order to somehow fit in, feeling like you can fit in. That's not the important thing. Beth?
I also want to add, if you're on the autism spectrum and you are an adult or an older person, you can help younger autistic people in a way that a lot of us cannot. And we have been super, super blessed with several people who either are on the autistic spectrum or have some characteristics of it, who helped us greatly in understanding our own child and helping our child during worship service and with work and all kinds of things. So, I mean, that's also a very a superpower, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can understand
Yeah.
how their
Yeah.
mind would work or the challenges they face.
Right. And that brings us to the last question that I had sent y'all. What can we do? What can neurotypicals, and we talked some about that, what can you do to support the autistic person? I think, Beth, that's a really good point. If you have, as an adult, if you have an understanding of, and you've gotten through this life to this stage, and you can say, well, I could have done this, this might have made it better. You can help someone younger, regardless of whether it's a child or whether it's a young adult. I think teenagers and young adults on the spectrum really have a hard time, because those are years that you really want to try to fit in, and be just like everybody else, different, but just like everybody else. We always laugh about kids. They always want to be different, like everybody else. So,
Also, if you're a parent of an
Mhm.
autistic child, I mean, and Julie, I bet you have too. And Mom, I know you have seen a child you're like, they're struggling. There's something going on there, and you have the ability to help them along in ways that maybe other adults don't know what to do, and so they kind of back off from that situation.
Right.
We were very blessed in that when we were new to the congregation where we are now, a lady approached me that I had never met before, because we were new. And she said, I perceive that maybe your children have some needs. And I said, yeah. And this is when they were small. I said, we're still trying to figure out exactly what that is. But yes, we do have some needs. And she was amazing. She stepped in. She said, I'm going to go sit in their Bible class. And she started sitting in the Bible class and setting up supports for them in the Bible class. She set up an entire program at our congregation of ladies that would come in from the time they were 3 years old until the 5th grade. They had an extra helper in that classroom, in addition to the teachers that just sat in between my two kids and made sure they were on track and knew where they needed to be, had supplies for them and everything ready. And so she was a real blessing to us and showed me what I can do for other people now when they come in and they have a child that has needs of any type.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Christine?
I guess don't judge people who need hearing protection during worship service. I am fortunate in that I am part of a congregation that is very supportive of the fact that I have to wear noise canceling aids sometimes to make it through church service, because it probably, if someone were mental, they might think that I was trying to block out the sound of the service, but I'm not. I'm wearing things that block out all background noise so that I will not have a meltdown or get a migraine trying to listen to the sermon, so that I can only hear the service and not, someone blowing their nose or someone's child making child noises or someone moving their foot across the floor or any number of things that might cause my nervous system to go into overload. There are days when I really need to wear the hearing protection to be able to fully participate in the worship service. And it really means a lot that I've had so many people be supportive and understanding of that. So I would just say, be like that.
Be like that. I like that. That's so. I always tell people, if a fella comes in with a broken leg, we're all like, oh, what can we do? And here's your crutches, and we'll help you to your seat. But if a person comes in with some behavior difference, you just need to straighten up. They just need to behave, But it's the same thing. And we need to, rather than make that snap judgment, we need to find out. Or as in Julie's case, we need to say, I can see maybe there's a way that I might help you, or just to be understanding, like Christine had said, and just say, I see this is a need of yours. And, and without judgment, that is such a wonderful thing. That's something you can do. Offer to help if you feel like you have a way that you can help with an autistic child. Or if not, if you can't help the child on the spectrum, perhaps you can be of some benefit to their siblings. Beth,
That's exactly what I was just getting ready to say. Good. Because a lot of times the siblings of a child who needs some extra attention, a lot of times it's hard for the parents to pay attention to all the things that are going on. So it does help to have somebody to just kind of step in and just help out.
That's right. And Christine was talking about her mother before the program being positive. So encouraging to parents when they're just struggling and doing the best they can, and you can just see the struggle over their face. Just to say, I see you're working hard at this. This is good. You're going to make it. You're going to, it's going to work. You're making good progress. I see, just positive things. And that can help so much when, as a young parent, when your kids are little, no matter whether they're on the spectrum or not, if they're just being kids, just to have that little extra, we're with you. We know you're going to do good, So all of those can really be helpful. And perhaps another one I wanted to say was, if you see this child has needs and perhaps the parent, like Julie is new to the area, and maybe you have some ideas, some contacts of someone who might be able to help with resources. Just say, I know I have a friend here in this that, would you like me to call her on your behalf? Or, just something, every little thing we can do to help to support a person with autism as an adult or a parent, any of that. But just to stand by and say, well, I'm just not going to be ugly to him. That's not what the Lord calls us to do. He calls us to really be helpful. And I've got a point here from Deb that says respite too can be so helpful. I can remember times with you all that it was just like, we're just going to keep this kid, so that the parents can have a day or two, because it's, it was difficult for you, and we can do something where we can support the parents. Maybe it's just a night out, something, but we need to be active, because we're the people of God, and this is one of God's children, and we need to do what we can to support them. Thank you, ladies, so much. And we've gone a long time tonight, but I do hope that what we have been saying is helpful to you, whether you are on the spectrum, have children on the spectrum, or if you are a member of a congregation with someone in the congregation that you can serve and that you can show God's love to, that is also on the spectrum. So thank you, ladies, so much for being with us this evening. Next week, we're going to be talking about an identity crisis. Who am I without you? Our Wise Older Women panel has gotten together, and we've recorded a lesson about who am I when my children leave home, when I have an empty nest, and who am I when I or my husband retire without working? Who am I? So we're going to talk about that, or you'll be able to watch that program next week. And so please continue to watch Older Women Likewise every Thursday at 8 o'clock Eastern time. But in the meantime, watch Answering Religious Error on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern. Wonderful lessons that the men bring on those occasions, as well as on Wednesday at noon, Bible question and answer program. It's a great program there for you. And each day, Monday through Friday, Cindy Dunnigan's husband, Mark, presents the Daily Answer podcast. And so that's wonderful lessons, too, for you. And as I said, next week, be sure to tune in and watch us again. And we really appreciate all our viewers. And we especially appreciate you ladies being with us this evening. Thank you so much for all your insights. And it has been a pleasure. So I hope you all have a good evening, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.